I got a lot of feedback on my video about the grand researcher who supposedly researched Wiccan and paganism, and then made a video where he proceeded to read the definition of Wicca and pagan off of Wikipedia. I thought that was ridiculous, so I commented on it uh, and showed the faults in his video. I got a lot of feedback from Wiccans and pagans, self-described Wiccans and pagans, who saw it as an attack on their religion. You can have any religion you want. I just say that what people practice as Wiccan and pagan is not anything what pagans believed in the ancient times. Now keep in mind, when the Wiccans and the pagan people call themselves pagans, say pagan, they're usually talking about Norse and Celtic deities and Germanic deities. Um, which the Germanic and the Norse were similar, but not the Celtic. Celtic were different. They were more like, I don't want to say Roman. They were influenced some by Rome, but they had their own distinct culture and religion. Part Irish, so kind of like the Celts. Uh, Vercingetorix and Boudica. But beside that, how do we know? I said that we didn't have any sagas handed down to us that were still pagan, and I still hold that to be true. The Beowulf, what we know about Beowulf, that was a pagan saga, and it was Christianized. Now we have bits and pieces of maybe what the religion, ideas or names or places that the religion held, different levels of heaven or hell or creation myth, but the practicing of that religion we don't know about. It's dead. It's gone. And I think that's something that to the Western mind, especially the American mind, is strange. We think because of our Protestantism that we could be able to pick up a holy book and read it and then start practicing that religion. No, this is why the Wiccans are Protestant. Wiccans are Protestant because they think they can do this. Um, this is a Western mindset. They're still taking a very Western secularized mindset and applying it to religion, and it's sad. As for the Greeks, uh, again, we don't know much about we have the writings, um, but for those people who challenge, how do we know what the Bible really says? Even though we dug up the Dead Sea Scrolls, and of the oldest written material, the oldest written material we have is from the Bible, so from the New Testament. I believe the oldest copies of Caesar's commentaries that we have on paper, the oldest copy is from the 13th, no, from the 14th century. It was copied and recopied by monks. And if it weren't for the Muslims and the Christians, all the Greek scripture wouldn't be copied down. You see, the Muslims and Christians didn't have to destroy anything; they just don't copy it, and it gets left to the sands of time. Now, there are some cases like the Nag Hammadi Library where they basically mummified the writings. They stuck them in a jar, put them in sand, no decomposition happened. Uh, but for paganism, for reviving it, the smart thing to do would be either to go to Africa, the African religions, which that's a bad idea because they've already blended with Catholicism. Voodoo is a great, and that's the thing. The pagans weren't distinct in their religion, so they could have bits of Christianity in it. So you can do that. Forms of African animism or voodoo that's in the Caribbean, or you could go to India. Again, India is still influenced heavily by Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism. Buddhism weighed heavy upon Hinduism, and if we look, we see Vedic Hinduism is not practiced anymore. Uh, Not even almost the reactionary Hindus to the Buddhists, so where we get the Bhagavad Gita, we don't really see that. We see more of a guru worship now that got big after the Sikhs, and we see the Sikhs influencing Hinduism too. Uh, Jains, I guess you could say, but those three are not considered Sanatana Dharma. They're not to be considered Hinduism by those who are Brahmanists or Vishnuists or Shivaists or however you want to divide Hinduism. Hinduism is not very clear on how to categorize it. It's not Western. It's not like Islam or Christianity that are Western religions where you can say this and this. So I still hold that we don't know. The religion of paganism has died out, of European paganism, and that there is no attempt to revive it. You can go back, but remember, you're still doing something modern. You're still looking at it from a modern perspective. You don't have the same connection to the land and the sea that they did. You can't have it, and it's good that you can't have it, because we live in an age of science. If your child dies, it's not because of a demon. Or if your child's sick, you take it to the hospital. You don't pray to a god or try to get the demon away. You don't make sacrifices to the sea gods for good fishing. I mean, we can do this, but then we rely on GPS and technology and things like that. The ancient people didn't have this. And in that way, I think maybe the ancient pagans and the ancient Israelites were a lot closer to each other than the modern day Jews or Christians are to the Israelites, or the modern day Wiccans are to the pagans. In a sense, I can't know what the first century Christians went through. I mean, that's hard persecution. And they didn't have a canon, and they relied on their local churches. So I am applying this to myself. But as of what was handed down, yes, I can know what they believed at Nicaea. And we know that's the what we practice now. And it got preserved. Why? Because it went to Ethiopia, Russia, translated in all these different languages. And we still see from the Chalcedonian Christians using the liturgy of John Chrysostom, somewhat modified, obviously, because we don't go to church for 5 hours anymore. But the belief system is handed down, and it's consistent. And I believe that the Eastern Orthodox can boast that they have the oldest tradition, the oldest practice. Although that's not really something to boast about. Yeah, we kept our traditions, and we can be proud of that. But do I have any idea what it was like under the Soviet rule when the Christians were being persecuted? No. Do I know what it was like under Diocletian? No. I have my own Christianity. American Orthodoxy, actually. Because remember, I am heavily influenced personally from Islam and Roman Catholicism. But to a much more clearer extent, I can know, because I can, and you can know too, what the Christians in the 4th century believed. Can't say the same thing for the pagans. There was so much writing done by the Muslims and Christians that we know what their religion looked like shortly after it was formed. Less than 200 years after it was formed, we know what it looks like. Paganism didn't have the same idea as holy books as we do. Many pagan societies didn't have a written language. So yes, we do have to rely on the Christians and the Muslims to tell us what they believe. And yes, there are people out there who read a work like the Malleus Maleficarum, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, the Hammer of the Witches, and think, oh wow, this is what witchcraft was. This is what the Catholic Church was up against. Instead of, this was the paranoia of clergy and of kings, and they use this to get rid of the unwanted. Rebels, anybody with any different political or religious ideas, because remember, religion and politics were combined. You couldn't separate them in the ancient world. And I think it's too proud of us to go back and think, okay, we can know what these people felt or believed, or we really feel the connection. And I think if you look at paganism, or what's called modern day paganism or Wicca, it's more like Christian Gnosticism. I mean, it looks heavily like Christian Gnosticism. The idea of Sophia, of a female force and a male force. Where do the pagans believe this? This is totally Christian Gnosticism. That's not the same as polytheism. I haven't met one Wiccan or pagan that claims to be a polytheist. When they describe to me what they believe, it's basically Gnostic Christianity. I would love to hear your replies. I would love for you to show me what am I not getting about this. Again, I respect all comments that don't have foul language or threats. Peace to you, to pagans, Orthodox, Wiccans, Catholics, and Muslims. To read the definition of Wicca and pagan off of Wikipedia. I thought that was ridiculous, so I commented on it. And showed the faults in his video. I got a lot of feedback from Wiccan. I got a lot of feedback on my video about the grand researcher who supposedly researched Wiccan and paganism, and then made a video where he perceived anything what pagans believed in the ancient times. Now keep in mind, when the Wiccans and the pagan people call themselves pagans, say pagan, they're usually talking about Norse and Celtic deities, and Germanic and pagans, self-described Wiccans and pagans who saw it as an attack on their religion. You can have any religion you want. I just say that what people practice as Wiccan and pagan is not deities. Which the Germanic and the Norse were similar, but not the Celtic. Celtic were different. They were more like, I don't want to say Roman. They were influenced some by Rome, but they had their own distinct culture and religion.